शन्नो विष्णुरुरुक्रमः नमो ब्रह्मणे नमस्ते वायो त्वमेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्मासि त्वामेव प्रत्यक्षं ब्रह्म वदिष्यामि ऋतं वदिष्यामि सत्यं वदिष्यामि तन्मामवतु तद्वक्तारमवतु अवतु मामवतु वक्तारम् ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ यश्छन्दसां वृषभो विश्वरूपः छन्दोभ्योऽध्यमृतात् सम्बभूव समेन्द्रो मेधया स्पृणोतु अमृतस्य देवधारणो भूयासम् शरीरं मे विचर्षणं जिह्वा मे मधुमत्तमा कर्णाभ्यां भूरिविश्रुवं ब्रह्मणः कोशोऽसि मेधया पिहितः श्रुतं मे गोपाय ॐ शान्तिः 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 ॐ अहं वृक्षस्य रेरिवा कीर्तिः पृष्ठं गिरेरिव ऊर्ध्वपवित्रो वाजिनीव स्वमृतमस्मि द्रविणं सवर्चसं सुमेधा अमृतोक्षितः इति त्रिषङ्कोर्वेदानुवचनम् ॐ शान्तिः 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 In our previous sessions, we were discussing the first part of this fourth Śānti mantra, in which the first sentence of which Triśaṅku, sage Triśaṅku, points out, shows by his own experience that the first step to find peace within one's heart is to raise above the identification with the physical as well as the subtle body, by first of all understanding and then realizing that I am that light of consciousness which is witnessing the body, which is witnessing what is being presented by the senses, which is witnessing the stream of thought, which is witnessing the stream of thought when engaged in understanding something, which is witnessing even the sense of I which I have, all the identities which I accumulate in my life, and the essence which witnesses the memories coming up as a result of the past impressions. And this is all that not only am I a witness, but my presence animates each one of these. It is my presence which animates the physical body. It is my presence, the presence of that witness, which animates and impels the senses of perception, the senses of action. It is my presence which inspires the work that is done by the mind, the work that is done by the intellect. Everything is being, I am that force which animates each one of these, what the masters have referred to here as the tree, the physical as well as the inner psychological body, which the Upanishads refer to as the subtle body. This is something that has to be meditated upon, has to be contemplated upon. And by working with our body, in our asana practice, by working with our mind in meditation, in the different states of meditation, the goal is to become aware of this inner witness of all activities, which is not only a mere witness, but it inspires all this activity, because in the absence of that inner witness, all this activity will be meaningless. So when a person, this realization, this experience brought tremendous solace, peace into the life of this Triśaṅku, this sage, whose life, as we saw when we were studying, when we started this discussion on this mantra in one of our previous sessions, was not an easy life. He had committed many mistakes. In fact, Triśaṅku means the one who has committed 3 mistakes, Triśaṅku, the one with the 3 stakes, like a stake is extremely painful. So someone who has committed these 3 great mistakes which caused tremendous guilt and pain in him. But it is with this realization that he starts to find solace, peace within himself. That is the first thing that we discussed, the first section of this mantra, Ahaṁ vṛkṣasya rerivā. I am the mover, I am the impeller, I am the animator of the tree of samsara, of the tree of the world, which means this body, as well as the physical, as well as the subtle body. Then now the second step. We worry about our bad name, and since his name in itself suggested how this was obviously not his original name, as I told you the other day, the story that he had in fact a beautiful name, Satyavrata, the one who had taken the vow of always speaking the truth. This was his name, given as a child by his parents. But due to the 3 terrible mistakes that he had made, the society gave him this name, the one with the 3 painful stakes in his heart, Triśaṅku. This name was given to him. He could not materialize the name that was given to him by his parents, because the reason in India our parents give us very beautiful and meaningful names. Most of the countries, they have, not all, because whenever somebody comes to meet my father, one of the first things that he asks, the moment you introduce yourself, he asks, what is the meaning? He's always very much willing to understand the meaning of the name of the person who has come to meet him. And so he always asks that person. Several of our friends then went back to their countries and sent us name dictionaries. So I have a collection of dictionaries of names in which you can look and see what's the meaning. So several people know the meanings of their names, many people don't. In India, each name, as long as it comes from Sanskrit language, has a beautiful meaning. And the idea is that originally the idea was to give such a name to the child which will inspire, so that it will inspire the child to strive in its life, to realize the significance, the meaning of that name in their lives. But this is what is it? What's the meaning of it? Yeah. Smart. Beautiful. Smart.
But after 12 years, my father thought, you are smart enough, but please do the things be quickly. And then since my name is Chong, but means rush.
Rush. Fast. Speed up. Not too slow. So, speedy smart. Sorry? Like? Like the horse with, yes. Yes. Quick and smart. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, most of the ancient cultures, they have beautiful names and beautiful meanings of their names. Thank you for sharing that. So, Triśaṅku had a beautiful name which but was unfortunately not realized by him in his life. He could not realize it. But again, this is one of the ideas that we come across frequently in the culture in India, that if the father is incapable to achieving something in his life, or the parents are incapable of achieving something in their lives, then the progeny, the child, strives to achieve that in their lives. And this is what his son actually did. And if you have read a little bit of Indian mythology, then by mythology I simply mean the ancient history of India, which is partly mythological in nature. Over the centuries it has accumulated a lot of mythology in it. But the Indian mind very much still identifies very deeply with these stories. They are told and retold, and we hear them again and again. And one of the major figures known to us as King Harishchandra, does that clearly? It must be coming to you also? No, but to you it does. To you it does, yes. King Harishchandra, he's the in Indian mythology, he's the symbol of speaking the truth and making the greatest sacrifices, always ready to make the greatest sacrifices, but he will speak always the truth. And his story, and I'm not going to tell that story now because it's not part of this discussion, but I'm just pointing to it, that Harishchandra, who was, in fact, it was his story initially in the childhood of Mahatma Gandhi, which inspired Mahatma Gandhi to lead a life of truthfulness. So the whole idea, which his autobiographies is known as the story of my experiments with truth. That is his famous autobiography, the most famous work by Mahatma Gandhi. And there he mentions that initially the inspiration of speaking the truth in his childhood came by two stories. The story of Sudama, which is an embodiment of poverty, but tremendous love and devotion to the divine. So Sudama Charita, the story of Sudama, the poor devotee of the Lord, the poorest of the poor devotee of the Lord, that story. And Harishchandra, who gave up his kingdom, his entire kingdom, simply because he had promised to someone something in his dream, and he wanted to keep that promise. He wanted to be truthful. So he gave up his kingdom. He got sold himself. And the story is it's a beautiful story. Certainly a beautiful story. You can check it on the internet if you are interested. These are well-known stories. So his son, this was the person that we are talking about here, Triśaṅku, is the father of Harishchandra, who was originally known as Satyavrata, the one who takes the vow of speaking the truth, but could not fulfill that in his life, but his son did it. Harishchandra did it. Okay, so now the second thing that worries him is his notoriety, his bad fame, his very name Triśaṅku, which he had, But then he realizes that my fame, my true fame, or the fame of my true nature, the one that he has experienced now, with which he is identifying now, that can never be defiled by any activity whatsoever. That fame is high like a mountain peak. That is what the second sentence, which is Kīrtiḥ pṛṣṭhaṁ rerivā. Kīrtiḥ, which means, Kīrtiḥ has several meanings, but first of all now, Kīrtiḥ means fame, pṛṣṭhaṁ means peak, the back, pṛṣṭha. I think also in several of the asanas we use, I can't remember now the word pṛṣṭha in which asana, but there are some asana names, or I thought so, which use the word pṛṣṭha there, because in any case pṛṣṭha means back. Purvottana is there, yes, but the word pṛṣṭha, because I was, it's there, I just completely can't remember now. In any case, pṛṣṭha means back. And in this case, it refers to the back of the mountain, which means girer. Girer means mountain, iva, which is high, which is lofty, like the peak of a mountain. The idea is that like the peak of the mountain is visible from far away, from very far away, because it is so high. A person just has to look up and the peak of the mountain is visible. Particularly, for example, it reminds me of the volcanic mountain that has just erupted recently in Bali, Mount Agung, the great mountain of Bali. Just 2-3 days ago, it erupted. Volcanic mountain, but it's one single cone, and from miles, I think around, when you start reaching Bali with your flight, and around half an hour before the landing time, you already start seeing these two volcanic mountainous peaks in Bali, Mount Agung, and on Lombok, the second adjacent island, Mount Ranjini. And it's a beautiful view because they stick above the clouds. The mountain peak is above the clouds. So you see it from the flight. And it's beautiful when you approach from India towards Bali, just to see that beautiful mountain peak, because it is so high, so lofty, that it is visible from far away. Before you even start seeing the island itself, you start seeing. And then the same thing when we travel on the ship from Bali to Lombok, which is around 6, 7, 8 hours journey by ship. You continue to see the mountain peak back in Bali and Mount Ranjini in front of you. So traveling between these two mountain peaks is really a very beautiful experience. The further you go, still it is visible, raising above the clouds. So just if we look up, that is all that is required, because it is there, just if we look up. That is how my true fame, the fame of my true nature is. And the reason is that every mystical culture, wisdom tradition, which lies at the source of any and every religious tradition, speaks of this divine light. Whatever word they are using, that doesn't matter whether. But usually, why I'm using the word divine light, because this metaphor of light is present in most of the cultures. We find it in the Bible, we find it in the Quran. It is the very soul of the Vedic teachings. This metaphor of light is amazing in itself. But every tradition, every culture, it has been experienced in every part of the world. And that is why it is in itself like that mountain peak that however far away, a culture, a society, a tradition might be, it's never too far away from it so that it is not visible. A person just has to look up, which in this case means to look within. And the moment, wherever and whenever someone has looked within themselves, they have found it. And they have expressed it in their own words, in their own symbols, in their own languages, in their own mental concepts. And those have become the wisdom traditions of this globe. Some of them evolved into organized religions, I would say, unfortunately. And in some cases, they just have been wisdom traditions which still inspire us today. Some less developed in their presentations, some more developed depending on how many individuals have contributed to it over the centuries. But at the source of every wisdom tradition, we find this same light with which sage Triśaṅku is identifying, and therefore he says that my fame is like the peak of a mountain. Because everyone, now he's identifying with that light. Every wise person has spoken of this light. As long as they look within. That was the first meaning of this sentence, Kīrtiḥ pṛṣṭhaṁ rerivā. Kīrtiḥ, by considering the first meaning of the word Kīrti, which means fame, but Kīrti can also mean light. Kīrti can also mean luster, splendor. So it's a less common meaning. Particularly today in Hindi language, we use Kīrti more in the sense of fame. And so someone like me approaching Sanskrit language from a Hindi mind, it seems that Kīrti is, which means fame, is the more natural meaning that comes to me. But that's not the only meaning. The other meaning, which is equally important in Sanskrit language, is light, luster, splendor. So the meaning then will be that my light, that's what I was, even in the sense of fame, I was talking about the light. Here in this case, I am that light, which is like the peak of the mountain that cannot be kept hidden. A peak of the high mountain, just go to Kunjapuri, for example, which is just 25 kilometers from here, and you see the farthest Himalayan high mountains, several peaks, snow-covered peaks are visible from there, which are hundreds and hundreds of kilometers away from there. So in the same way, I am that light which cannot be kept hidden. Like the peak of a mountain, reminds me, and in this meaning, this is a reminder of one of the teachings of Jesus Christ on the Sermon on the Mount, which is in the Sermon on the Mount is, for my Father, it is the most beautiful part of the New Testament. He really loved it and he remembers it by heart, and he repeatedly quotes it. Vinoba Bhave used to do the same thing, and I think Mahatma Gandhi also speaks somewhere, being deeply touched and impressed by the Sermon on the Mount. And there, one of the verses are that you are the light of the world, a city that is set on a hill which cannot be hidden. And the third meaning of the word Kīrti, the least popular meaning of the word Kīrti, is in fact a city. a great palace, a temple, a great citadel. So this is how close sometimes these ancient teachings, and this is one of the works that Swami Abhishektananda, he was a Christian monk, but traveling the Himalayas, and he has done a lot to bring together the biblical teachings with the Upanishadic teachings, and showing how several passages of the most ancient parts of the Vedas are so similar to passages in the New Testament. And I think then it was his disciple, Father Bede Griffiths, who is a well-known figure and has written many, many books on bringing together and exploring the commonalities, the similarities between Christianity and Advaita Vedanta of the Upanishads. Father Bede Griffiths, at least in South India, he lived all his life. He was originally, I think, from Britain. He was British. But then he had come to India at a very young age. And he opened his ashram in South India and lived all his life there. He used to travel towards the end of his life. He used to travel a lot, and he used to give several discourses, even together with the Dalai Lama. So, for example, one of my friends, Neith Konlan, if you remember, he was here a while ago. He had organized an event for the Dalai Lama and Bede Griffiths together in Perth, in Australia. So Bede Griffiths is an author that is worthy to be explored, because he brings together, and he does it with tremendous authority. He knows, he has studied Sanskrit, he has studied Advaita Vedanta well, and he has studied Christianity as well. Okay. One last thing that I would like to mention about this word Kīrtiḥ is that Kīrtiḥ also is related to the word Kirtana, singing the glories of the divine, which we did yesterday evening. In a wonderful way. In a wonderful way. Most of the time on Indian televisions, all that I watch are comedy shows. Yes, that is what I like the most, such as Kapil Sharma's show and these different shows. So I'm a great fan of comedy shows. But yesterday all the time I was thinking that it is so sad that none of them does something like you did. Really taking the ancient teachings, the ancient beautiful teachings, and presenting them. At least to my knowledge, I have not seen any comedian who does that. And so that approach, and then really Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, giving us this feeling that this whole world is like our family at the end. This was something unique this time. I mean, I've been seeing his performances since so many years, but this was something really unique and very touching, and really in the true spirit of yoga, where all of us come together like a family. It was really, 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 really beautiful. Thank you very much for that. That kirtana, that singing of the glory, this is what kirtana means, the singing of the glory of that divine light, of that supreme light which enlightens everything, singing the glory of that light. And Kirti is that glory. Kirtana is the singing of that glory. So, just to show you the connection between, just to make us aware of the connection between the words, then we become capable of understanding them even better from all different sides. So this was the second step for sage Triśaṅku to find peace within himself, that he broke the identification with the accumulated labels. Neither did he care about the beautiful name that was given to him, Satyavrata. He didn't care about that anymore. He raised beyond that, as well as the bad name that was given to him and which is even mentioned in this mantra itself, iti Triśaṅkor vedānuvacanam, which became his name, but he didn't care. He didn't care because he had raised above those accumulated identifications. Whether they are good, who cares? It's a name which was given to him at some part of his life. But he was present before that. Even the good name, Satyavrata, was given to him at least 11 days after his birth. So for 11 days he had no name, yet he was. So he identified with that. And that's why neither the fact that he could not fulfill the significance of the beautiful name mattered for him anymore, nor the fact that he accumulated this bad name mattered to him anymore, because he had raised beyond it. He has started identifying with that light, which cannot be named. Either it cannot be named, it has no name at all, or all names are its names. And that is one of the first rules that when we study Sanskrit grammar, Kayyata, this great grammarian from Kashmir, he explains in the very beginning, I remember, that he states that every word, ultimately, the designee, whatever the designee is, it is a manifestation which arises within consciousness, from consciousness, within consciousness, and merges back into consciousness, and therefore no designee of any word is different from consciousness, and that's why the ultimate designee of every single word is consciousness. This is what he points out. So either it has no name, or all names are its names. That's why when we say these 1,000 names of the divine, Vishnu Sahasranama, the 1,000 names of the divine. In Sanskrit, 1,000 means infinite. The Sanskrit word sahasra for 1,000 does not only mean 1,000, it means infinite. So the idea is that the divine has infinite names, but now the list cannot be infinite. So there we have to stick with 1,000 names. And these 1,000 names again are very beautiful names. Each one of these names has a beautiful meaning, and several of the masters of modern India, even such as Vinoba Bhave, the spiritual successor of Mahatma Gandhi, used to recite these names every day. In fact, Vinoba Bhave there is a beautiful diary. I had seen it in my childhood. I think it must be there somewhere, in which he draws beautiful paintings, inspired, simple paintings. He was not a painter, but just simple paintings inspired by the names, by meditating on one of these 1,000 names. So this was this passage. Kīrtiḥ pṛṣṭhaṁ rerivā, my fame, my luster, my splendor is high like a mountain's peak. Now comes the next section, Ūrdhva-pavitraḥ, which means that Ūrdhva means above and pavitraḥ means purifying, pure, clean. The idea is that like a raindrop which falls from heaven, each one of us is born completely clean, completely pure. Yes, when a drop of rain falls on the ground, if it falls in dust, if it falls in dirt, then it accumulates some of those uncleanly particles. But again, do those unclean particles really contaminate that? Because you can again, it requires some effort. They can be filtered out, and again, one can acquire clean, pure drop of water from there. It might come as a shock, not really, though, if you think carefully, that every single drop of water that we have been consuming in this life has been on this earth from millions and millions of years, which means all the water that we are in fact consuming has been recycled thousands and thousands and thousands of times. Don't know how many times these drops would have passed through countless bodies, and just think about it, because there is no new source of water on this planet. Just the same water is being recycled. What is happening? It gets contaminated. Then again, Mother Nature purifies it, makes it clean. The whole process of raining and the way the rays of the sun, they lift the water but leave the impurities down there, and then again rain down clean water. That is part of the process, and then the earth itself works like a filter, so the water that we find in the ground is completely clean. But ultimately it is all recycled water. There is no new water. But what we need is just to make an effort to clean it, because deep down every drop of water is completely clean. And if we can understand that, then we can understand the same thing about ourselves, because very much like a drop of water, we too come into this world free from hatred, free from differentiation, free from anger, free from all these qualities. But then as we grow up and we accumulate, we learn these emotions, they come into existence and we think them to be very much part of our being. But like that drop of water, through effort, through practice, through hard work, one can again experience that purity which lies, so to say, at the source. And this is what sage Triśaṅku, when he says that I am pure from above, which means I am pure at the source. It is realization of that ultimate source. Coming back, because he's coming back to his inner source, he's identifying with that inner source, with that light which cannot be contaminated. Light cannot be contaminated. There is nothing that can contaminate light. This is again one of the ideas that the masters express in the Upanishads, that like the sun, which equally enlightens everything, good and bad, clean and unclean, pure and impure, simply just enlightens. But the rays which touch the clean and the unclean, the pure and the impure, those rays are neither pure nor impure. They just enlighten the pure as well as the impure. But they themselves remain untouched, unperturbed, uncontaminated by any type of contamination. In the same way, this light, this inner light of consciousness, it just enlightens the purities as well as the impurities. But neither it becomes pure, because it was never impure, so neither it becomes pure by enlightening something that is pure, a pure idea, a pure thought, a good thought, a noble thought, and neither it becomes impure by enlightening an impure, a bad, a harmful thought. So it is again, he comes back to this idea that at the source, as his identification with that light, he is completely pure. On the contrary, as I just pointed out, that the light, in fact, the light of the sun purifies things, purifies the water. Fire has this capacity to purify. It burns away the impurities. The light of the sun, it destroys the microorganisms which would be harmful. That is what the sun does every day when it rises. A world which would be always dark, we can't live in it. Constantly the sun is purifying the environment for us. That is what the sun is doing. That's what light does. It burns away all impurities. So pavitra is not only pure, clean, but pavitra is that which purifies, which cleanses. So he's not only, and I cannot put this into English language, because if I'm saying that I'm pure at the source, or I'm purifying at the source, both have to be mentioned. Not only am I pure, but I am that which purifies everything. That is what I am. So not only, because the Sanskrit word for simply pure is puta. Puta in Sanskrit, not pavitra. That is past participle of pure, which means purified. So puta means purified, something that is pure. But the word pavitra that he uses here it of course means pure, but it also means that which purifies. So see the level of realization, someone who all his life suffered because he felt contaminated by the deeds that he had performed in his life. Today the realization he has is that I am not contaminated, but I am pure at my essence, and not only am I pure, but my essence is that which purifies everything. And that is the idea which we also have in the Gayatri mantra when we say Om Tat Savitur-Varenyam Bhargaha. That idea of Bharga. Bharga, which means Bharga it's singing the glory of that light which scorches away the impurities, which removes the impurities. And for that reason, sometimes wisdom, very often wisdom, is compared to fire, the fire of wisdom, because it destroys, first of all, darkness, and it destroys the concomitants of the darkness of ignorance, which is this strong ego, selfish attachment, hatred, fear, etc. In fact, in the context of yoga, whenever we speak, in the context of yoga, in the context of Upanishads, whenever we speak of impurities, and I remind of this again and again, let me remind us of this again and again, this time also, that anything that leads our mind away from this peaceful center within the heart, which distracts, which causes turbulence, turmoil, tumult within our heart, that is seen as an impurity. And a purity, a pure thought, a pure idea is that which enables us to settle down, which enables us to become peaceful, which enables us to find peace within our heart. This is a very basic definition of what is pure and what is impure in the understanding of yoga and Vedanta. Even the same thing is the Sanskrit words for virtue and sin. The same word, because the Sanskrit word for virtue, for good conduct, comes from the root which means purity, and the Sanskrit word for sin means that from which we need to protect ourselves. Again, why? Because it causes turbulence, restlessness. We lose our inner peace and tranquility because of something. So that is what is referred to as Baba. So we'll come back to this idea. There is still a few things that I would like to discuss related to this idea. Ūrdhva-pavitraḥ, I am pure from above. What does above mean? Because this up and down, they are relative concepts. From the ultimate viewpoint, there is nothing up and there is nothing down. And it's the same thing about in space. It's just relative depending on where you are standing. Depending on where we are standing now, Costa Rica is down. And beautifully explained this yesterday by you. And if we are standing, one day I hope I will be standing in Costa Rica. And when I will be standing, then India will be down. So it very much depends on where we are. And that's why they are relative terms. In Sanskrit, relativity is referred to, in Sanskrit we call it vyavastha, a description which always requires to find an answer, but from where? But from where? East, in the east, but from where? In the west, but from where? In the south, but from where? In the north, but from where? Up, but from where? Below, but from where? So the moment you use these terms in Sanskrit grammar, we treat them, the technical word for them is vyavastha, which means they require a point of reference. So what is the point of reference in this urdhva, in this above? Is it that just we have to look up and find God somewhere up there above the clouds? Is that what it means? Or is there something deeper than that? But we will discuss this in our next session. Yes, exactly. All we need is just to go up there. That works in a way, because if you look at the experience that the astronauts have, there is this overview effect. If you read that, that's extremely close. And in fact, when there is a beautiful small documentary on that prepared. It's on YouTube, and just have a look at it. It is really beautiful, because they were having these experiences up there by looking back the planet Earth, and they wanted to find a description and wanted to find an explanation of what is happening. So then they approach several of the university scholars, and one of the university scholars says, well, whatever you are experiencing has been described already by sage Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras 2,500 years ago. So, it's a beautiful documentary on this overview effect. I think that's the title. Check it out. So that would be a way of going higher up and just looking down from there. Other ways are just climbing up the highest mountains, such as, and that's why in ancient world we respected mountains so much, because they gave us this overview, this view of a witness, uninvolved witness. Why do people climb the Mount Sinai? Why do people climb several sacred mountains in India? Why do people climb mountains in all different parts of the world, in all different cultures? Because they give you this sense of an uninvolved witness. So, any thoughts or any? Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
So in this Śānti mantra, it talks about Triśaṅku's declarations, enlightenment. Do any of the other Śānti mantras mention, none of them that we've done before, mention a particular historical aspect that's been enlightened?
Yeah.
And I was wondering about that, and then the fact that it's rishis, the writers of the Upanishad are rishis, but this seems more like it's been written by a contemplative Muni, because he's contemplating Triśaṅku's enlightenment. So I was just
Other Shanti mantras, they don't mention any name, as far as I can't think of. No, not really. Any one of the other 10 Shanti mantras don't mention. Yet, in some cases, in some cases, we do know who is the author, who is the master of the Shanti mantra. So, for example, the one of the next one would be Sage Yajnavalkya, and like this. So, and I think with research some more names could be found, but it is very unlikely for the Upanishadic or the Vedic masters to leave behind their names. It is very rare. And it is interesting that this one did actually leave back his name, and the name that he left back was not the good name, because he could have also said that iti satyavratasya vedānuvacanam, but he left behind his bad name, So this really is in a way that as if it's a message to tell us that even he has reached so much beyond any identification that he has, that even the worst name that he had doesn't matter to him anymore. And you said something about Rishi and Muni.
Yeah, but is he talking about himself in the third person then? Is that what he's doing?
That is quite possible. I mean, that's what several of the poets in India have been doing. That they would just, at the end, they would put their names, even if it's in a third person, but it is like a mark that so says Mirabai or so says Suradas, he says, but still he himself is writing it. So it's it could be very well he, it could be, I don't even know who is the author of the section in which this occurs, because it doesn't give any particular name for that whole section. So, because this occurs in the Taittiriya Aranyaka, and this particular section, the whole section. The next section is clearly a discussion between sage Varuna and his son Bhrigu. But this section, there is no idea. And it's more a section of miscellaneous collection. What you find in this section are, for example, the last teachings that the masters gave to their student before he went back home. So this is part of that section, So there is no name other than this there. So either he himself put his wonderful, beautiful name in there, or somebody else did it. We would never know. Yeah, there is, I don't think. Check it out, but can't think of any. Yes?
When you say Buddha means pure, and is that then Buddha?
No. What I said is Puta, P-U-T-A, Puta. And that is Buddha. That is Buddha. Buddha means the awakened one. Both are past participles. Buddha is the past participle of Budh, which means to wake up, and Puta is the past participle of Pu, which means to purify. So, sorry? That's Hindi word. In Hindi we use the word Puta, Ūrdhva-pavitra. We use it together with Pavitra, Ūrdhva-pavitra. Ūrdhva-pavitra बोलते हैं, हिंदी में बोलते हैं ना, Ūrdhva-pavitra. So we use the word, not alone, we use it always together with Pavitra, but in Hindi we use it.
And as we're talking about the name, I'm wondering, could you please explain a bit why yoga means yoga and what does this mean exactly? But because sometimes I'm confused, because since we have been practicing yoga so many years, maybe most of them not really understand what this yoga is.
See, the root yuj means samadhi, and samadhi means sam means total, a means from all sides. It's that centripetal tendency, the opposite of centrifugal tendency. Sam emphasizes it, totality. A means from all sides. Dha, which means to hold the mind on something, and E, that last. So there are two prefixes, sam, a, sam, totality, a, from all sides. Dha is the verb, the root, which means to hold, and E either means the state, it's the suffix, either the state or the activity. The state or the activity in which the mind has been taken away from everywhere else and has been fixed upon something. This is a very grammatical meaning of the word samadhi. And samadhi is given as a synonym of yoga. Again, by the grammarians, going back to the very root, yuj samadhau, yuj means samadhi, and the same thing Vedavyasa does in his commentary on the first sutra of the Yoga Sutras, where he says, Yogaha Samadhi. Yoga and Samadhi, they are synonyms. So, anything that is practiced into that direction, which helps us to focus on something, which brings our mind back to ourselves. Otherwise, the mind is scattered through the senses in the whole world. So, that which allows us to pull our attention back to ourselves, that is, any practice is yoga. That would be, I think, the most easiest and purely grammatical in nature explanation of the word yoga. The rest, of course, the masters have yoga. The word yoga has been used in so many different meanings, on so many different contexts. But this is the fundamental meaning. Basic meaning.
Okay.
Yes, please.
I was wondering, name changing is something that still happens in India these days. I mean, there are some legal issues related to it, like one cannot change the name
Yeah.
overnight, I guess.
Yeah.
You said that parents, they usually name their kid after something they have accomplished in life. Is that something that happens, and if so, can the kid change his name?
I don't know about the legal aspect of this question, whether it is legally permissible or not, that I'm not aware. That the lawyer would have to answer that question. But as part of this spiritual journey, changing names is very much part of it. We see that. So, for example, when somebody leaves their family and comes into places like Rishikesh, it is very common for them that the moment they get their first initiation, they get a rather more spiritual, a name which has a deeper spiritual significance. So they would have, and that is always seen as a new birth, you know. And even, monasticism. Part of all these monks that we see, when they become monks, they actually give up their old names completely and they take a new name. And in most cases, I have seen that the government recognizes the new names. Yes, so if with most of the monks, I have seen that their new name, which was in fact in place of their original name, they will have the monastic name, even in their passport, and in the name of in the place of the name of the father, the previous father, they will have the name of their teacher. This is very common. So that thing is certainly allowed. I know in Switzerland changing names is nearly impossible.
And now even in India also,
It's getting more and more difficult. Yeah, it becomes very difficult to change. Very difficult to change. You have to continue with that mistake. Yes, if it's a mistake, if there is a mistake, then you just have to continue with it. Yes.
In China, it's very easy, I think.
To change names. Interesting.
It's not easy anymore. No, before it's in the police station, they know it's very right. It's not easy.
Oh, but
Yes, and then if you want to change, make it.
but still easy than Switzerland.
And you have to change.
No, in Switzerland it was on my passport it was very difficult for me to get it changed.
A lot of people think if they are not successful because they don't have good name. So they pay a lot of money for the picture.
Okay.
Change a better name. They think they can change their life.
Sorry?
Because somebody is changing, but they will not change the name on the ID. Maybe they are using another name on their name card, but not in the ID.
Not in the ID.
Does the sadhu need an Ahaṁ card?
Depends whether he has a bank balance or not. If he has... No. The latest declaration by the akhalas is that for somebody to be called Santa, which is the Hindi equivalent of saint, is that they should have no bank balances, no personal bank balance. They should have no bank accounts themselves, no personal money. They should have no personal money.
Even a beggar has bank balance.
Beggars have bigger bank balance.
They have been given a government account. Every English put into a bank account, not a genuine account by the government. So now when they got an account, the government put in some money, they have some
Yeah, more and more you are getting stuck with your name. The government wants you to be stuck with your name. Whatever your parents have decided for you, that's it. You cannot change, you cannot improve.
Even your eyes, everything is registered now. Everything, all the fingers, the eyes, everything. So it's quite a lot.
Privacy laws are problem. Being monitored by the government, all the biometrics.
I have a funny story about that. When my guru initiated me, I was really excited to change my name. I thought it would be a nice challenge, and I was like really gung ho. And then, when he gave me initiation, he said, "You keep your name. I like it." It was really funny because I was really attached to that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think that's the roots,
That's, yeah.
That is what was given to you when you were born.
And usually the guru knows the student, and in most cases changing the name is helpful, but in some cases they understand that just living with them with their name is more important and more helpful.
But it's very strange. I don't know because you will not understand. But when you get older, you see, for example, I had another name. Then my husband gave me a name, and I all the time said I want a name which is not so much different, And somehow I changed the name because my name was very difficult for Indian people. So I chose a name which is easy in the West also, but also it's an Indian name. But now it's very strange. Very often, when I just sit quietly or I do something, my name, my really real name, not how you say, sometimes we have a little change in the name also, like.
But the original name is
which was used so little, even with in the family, it very often comes to my mind.
It's the same thing with Prabhuji, Mataji. It's the same thing with Prabhuji. See, over the last 30-40 years, we have been calling my father Prabhuji. His original name is Surya Prakash. And he sort of many times, just while sitting, but it is Surya Prakash, isn't it? Not Prabhuji.
So I want to say it's the root.
The very roots.
It's like
Still.
Like in the religion which you are born, it's your root. You can't deny it.
And you shouldn't.
Can't,
You shouldn't.
Gut it out.
No, no.
It's just not possible.
You can grow above it, you can grow beyond it, but deep down those roots are there. They are there. And why should we deny them? Why should we? Why?
40 years, I never thought about it. It never came to my mind,
And same with Prabhuji, because all the years he did not like, in fact, anybody to call him by that name. By his original name. We all called him Prabhuji. That's why we are used to call him Prabhuji. But now, that original name is coming. So, you make a U-turn. You make a U-turn.
Chinese name is quite hard for foreigners to call, and usually when we start to study English, all teachers ask us to give ourselves
English names,
yes.
yes.
That's why we have an English name. But when you were talking about that, I remember it was one time, Eddie, he's not here.
Yeah.
And he asked me maybe 2 years back, he said, "What's your name?" And I said, "Who knows that?" And he said, "No, as your friend, I want to know your real name, but not your English name."
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then I told him that I'm Chong. And that's why when people raise here, they are not calling me Chelsea, whatever again, just call me Chong because they know that's
Yeah.
my name.
Yeah, I see this with the Chinese group. When they come here, the moment you ask them their name, they always give an English name. And in the beginning, I never understood how come Chinese people have English names, And then, as funny as Apple. One girl, when I asked her name, she said, "My name is Apple." I said, "Well, Shiva and apple. You know? Shiva and apple. So I was like, Shiva and apple. Okay. The Chinese friends called Shiva and apple. Wow. Yeah.
What's your name? And we say this. We will always say Chinese name first, and they say it's so hard. Do you have another easy name? So what to do?
What to do? Yes. Now I understand.
Now I found if you use first name, it's easy. Like
Qing.
yeah, for me, Qing is very easy for them.
For them.
But for my name, Haixia, really difficult.
Difficult. Yeah. Let us conclude for today, and we will continue this discussion again on Tuesday. Let us conclude with the prayer for universal well-being. सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः सर्वे सन्तु निरामयाः सर्वे भद्राणि पश्यन्तु मा कश्चित् दुःखं भवेत् ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः. Thank you very much.